Hey, great Sunday, everyone. How are you? How are you? I am so happy to be back with you this evening. Of course, I'm your girl, Audrey Bella Langston, and welcome back to another episode of Bella's Hope for Healing. I want to say happy Black History Month. As you can see, I'm repping in my colors. Yes. I hope you are all doing wonderful, and I hope that you are ready for a great show tonight. So I want to get right into a few little housekeeping norms before we get started. Please don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and share. Not only here on YouTube, but don't forget about us on Facebook as well. We love both of them, and we got people that look at both. Some prefer one over the other. So please don't forget to do that. Also, I want you guys to be involved in the show. So please don't forget to put all your questions and comments in the chat box. You can just say hello to me. Let me know you're here. We are here for you. I am here for you. My guest is here for you. Or to just drop by and say hello, to give an encouraging word. And I promise that if I don't get to you right away, I will try to get to you at some point with the question you may ask. Okay. And let me just tell you, I am so very excited, okay, about tonight, because I have a live legend on my show tonight. Yes. Dr. Clive Callender is an African-American surgeon and professor of surgery at one of our great HBCUs. And he is also in the medicine field as well. He is trained, in transplantation, and he also founded the Howard University Transplant Center in 1974. Think about what that means to transplantation back then. In order to increase the frequency of organ donation among African Americans, he founded the National Minority Tissue Transplant Education Program, which is also known as MOTEP. Now, this wonderful man of God is now 86 fabulous years of age, and he has received countless awards and commendations for his tireless work and dedication to these programs. Okay, so that's some of the things that we're going to talk to him about tonight. So get ready, strap yourself in, because this is going to be good. And please welcome my iconic guest, Dr. Clive Callender. Dr. Calendar. How are
Hi, how are
you?
you?
Good.
Doing
Thank
great,
you
thanks.
so much for being here. I so am honored to have you on my show.
I'm thrilled to be here to join you.
Yes, 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 especially on a Sunday and also in celebration of Black History Month. So I really thank you, and I am so looking forward to this interview. And so I'm going to go right in and start asking you a few questions. And I want to start by asking, would you tell us about what spearheaded your interest in the field of transplantation and how you came to be the founder of MOTEP?
Well, it's an interesting question because uh, it all began for me, as far as I know, when I was about 7 years of age. Because when I was seven, I heard a sermon and I decided that I wanted to become a medical missionary. And so from that point on, I purposed to become a doctor. Now, there are a lot of things that happened on the way that made it a little exciting and interesting. For example, just to start at the very beginning, when I was born, actually, my mother died giving birth to me and my twin brother. She
Wow.
had two boys and two girls before, but the two boys died. And so she prayed to the Lord and asked that she could have two boys. Well, actually, her prayers were answered, but while they were answered, she also died while giving birth to myself and my twin brother. And as a consequence, we were actually brought up in a foster home because my dad was working in Boston. And so for the first few years, we were in a foster home. After that, uh, he married again, and my stepmother actually had us for a year or two, and then she had to be hospitalized because she became mentally ill. And then, so finally, we wound up at the age of four with my aunt, Ella Waterman. And she then raised us from that point until she died when I was 18. But in answer to your question, it was my quest and my desire to be a medical missionary that led me to uh, go to college. Uh, then, at the age of 15, I contracted pulmonary tuberculosis. And
Mm.
I was in the hospital for 18 long months. And actually, I had half of my right lung removed because of TB, which did not respond to treatment. And then after that, because I was in the hospital for 18 months, uh, I, I I actually had to do two very interesting things. I had a uncle who was a anesthesiologist and one who was a dermatologist, and they brought me the Merck manual, which is the doctor's Bible. And I read the Merck manual and the American College Dictionary from cover to cover. And while I was there, uh, I had to take the so-called intelligence quotient test. And the test determined that I had whatever it took to become successful, and that
Mhm.
there was nothing I couldn't do if I wanted to. So having tuberculosis, and at that time, it was 1951, I had tuberculosis, and it was not treatable at that time. They didn't have medications to cure it, and that was why I had to have my lung removed. But anyway, to uh, get out of that, I finally got out of the hospital, and I was arrested. It was arrested. The disease was arrested, so I was able to leave the hospital, and I then finished high school and went to college. And while I was in college, I didn't do as well as I thought I should have. As a matter of fact, the first year in college at Hunter College in Brooklyn, and I'm sorry, in Manhattan, New York, I got a 2.5 out of four average for 4 years. The first year, I actually I had a less than 2.0 average. And my medical advisor said to me that there are many things you can do, Clive, but getting into medical school is not one of them.
Mm.
And so I recognized that she didn't understand that I served a God who, for whom there's nothing that's impossible. And so that was going to be my quest. And so I understood that she didn't know any better when she advised me that I couldn't make it. And so I therefore, uh, however, recognized that I was very immature. I didn't think that I needed to know English and history and all those subjects, which of course are vitally important. But when you're young and you're a teenager, you think you know everything and know almost nothing. And so I purposed to do better the second year. The second year, I did a little better, but I got an F in the course. And so it seemed as though she thought that she was right. I wouldn't become a doctor. But anyway, I persisted and met another professor who interested me in physiology. As a consequence, I spent the rest of my 4 years at Hunter College majoring in physiology and chemistry. And when I got to my senior year at Hunter College, which was predominantly a Jewish school at that time, I was one of maybe about 6 or 7 blacks in a school of about 1,000 students. And
Wow.
uh, it was hard to believe that at the end of 4 years, I had an average of 2.5 out of 4. And so nobody expected that I would get into medical school. Of course, I had my faith in God. So I
Mhm.
just knew that I was going to be a medical missionary in spite of what everybody else said. And lo and behold, in the November of my senior year, I was the first one in my class accepted into medical school to go to Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee. And so, in many ways, my lifelong dream was beginning to be satisfied because it meant to me that I could be accepted into medical school. There was there were a couple of other hurdles, though. My father was a railroad chef, didn't make much money, so didn't have a way to pay for medical school. And so my twin brother and my sister and everybody with any sense said to me, "You'll never get to medical school. You don't have the funds." Of
Mhm.
course, I knew that I served a God who was greater than you can imagine, who controlled the universe. And so I knew that that was my destiny. And lo and behold, my church actually raised the funds so that I could actually go to medical school. And so uh, in 1959, I then went to Meharry Medical College and started my medical school there. Now, because of my poor record at Hunter College, after I finished my first year and made the dean's list, I went back to my professor, Johan, who had told me that I wouldn't make it as in medicine. And I went there to try to tell her of how the fact that I made the dean's list. I was so thrilled and excited to tell that story. But after sitting there for half an hour, I realized that she was not going to talk to me. And as I left, she said, "Clive, you're a liar. You didn't go to medical school. You didn't. Uh, you told people that you were going to medical school. That was a lie, and I don't ever want to see you again." And so
Wow.
I never saw her again, and I was very disappointed that that never happened. However, to make a long story short, at the end of 4 years, I finished as the number one medical student in the class, much to my amazement. And that meant that I would be able to finish my training and become the medical missionary that I always wanted to be. It turned out, though, that while I was doing my externships, I encountered a, uh, a patient who was bleeding and actually looked like he was going to die. But the surgeons came in, operated on him, saved his life, and discharged him. And as a consequence of that, I decided that although I wanted to be a medical missionary, I wanted to be a surgical medical missionary. And so with that, I changed my field from medicine to surgery, and did a surgical residency first at Harlem Hospital in New York City. And then I heard about the great surgeons at Howard University. And I then transferred to Howard University, where I spent the rest of my training as a surgeon. And it was there that I encountered a number of things. One of the things that I encountered that got me interested in surgery was I encountered a Dr. William Mattori, who was doing animal transplants. And we were doing animal transplants in the laboratory. But this did not deter me from my life's dream that I got at the age of 7. I wanted to be a medical missionary. And lo and behold, I encountered one of my medical students who was from Port Harcourt, Nigeria. And he identified for me that there was an opening in Nigeria. They needed surgeons desperately, and wondered if I would be interested. And lo and behold, the door opened, and myself and my wife, Fern, went to Port Harcourt, Nigeria, so I could have my life's dream come true as a medical missionary to Port Harcourt, Nigeria. And there I got the opportunity to be a surgeon in Africa, be that medical missionary that I dreamed about, and able to perform many operations, go into the bush and talk about my love for Jesus Christ, and how I felt that this was my life's dream to come true. And so for 9 months, I labored in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. And at the end of 9 months, I came home because I wanted to decide on where I was going to do medical missionary long term. However, when I got, and this I'm answering your question, when I got back, I had lost 50 pounds, and they did tests to find out why did you lose 50 pounds, and they could find no diseases, and so I decided, well, let me give it one more try. I recovered. Decided to go back to Africa for another 3 months. After 3 months, I lost 25 pounds and contracted malaria, and decided that my mission field wasn't going to be Africa after all. And I thought that maybe I should go into some other field in surgery. And around that time, there was this new field called transplantation. And because I thought surgery was exciting but not as challenging as I journeyed, and I thought this was a new field, and maybe I'd go into transplantation. So it wasn't that I knew a lot about transplantation. It was just that it was a new field. It was new. It was innovative, and I thought I could. It was challenging, and I thought I could try it. So I then decided to, since Africa wasn't for me, I decided I would go to the University of Minnesota because one of my classmates was there, Bob Allen, and he said there was a Dr. Nigerian who was one of the greatest transplant surgeons in the country and probably the world. And so I got an opportunity to train with him for 2 years between 1971 and 1973. I trained there and then came back to Howard and started the transplant program at Howard University. And one of the things that I noticed shortly after starting the program at Howard University was that there was a shortage of Black donors. And while Blacks comprise more than 70% of the people who are on transplant waiting lists and people on dialysis who needed kidneys, they were rarely ever organ donors. And so members of the Southeastern Organ Procurement Foundation came to me and they said, "You're Black." And Sam Kuntz, who actually was the first African-American transplant surgeon, died of complications of high blood pressure. That left me as the senior African-American transplant surgeon in the United States. And for that reason, they came to me and they thought I could do something about it. And I looked at the data that they shared with me, and it was alarming that 70% of the people on dialysis in the United States, particularly in the southern part of the United States, were Black, but yet less than 5% of the donors were Blacks. And so when they came to me to share the information for me, the one thing they didn't have was money. And so with that in mind, I asked them if they could find funds to help me do research to find out this mystery. Why is it that we are so disproportionately afflicted and affected by these diseases, but are really donors? And they came back to me and said, "We don't have any money," which is not unusual for us. They want us to help, but they don't want to get the funds to help with. And so I went to Howard University. Dr. James Baton, an eminent psychologist, and myself went to Howard University and asked them to give us some funds so we could do research. And they gave us the tidy sum of $500. And with that small, tiny sum of $500, we're able to go into the District of Columbia and identify the 5 reasons why African Americans were reluctant to become donors. And the first one was the fact that they were not aware that we were disproportionately afflicted and affected by high blood pressure, by diabetes, and by obesity. And that we didn't know that we need more organs than any other ethnic group. We have 4 times the incidence of high blood pressure and diabetes. And those are the 2 commonest causes of kidney failure. And so with that in mind, we decided to go into the District of Columbia with $500, paying people $25 a piece to answer the question, why are Blacks not becoming donors? And out of that $500 in that study in 1978, we got the 5 answers that still remain to be the reasons why African Americans are reluctant to become donors. First, a lack of information. They didn't realize we need organs more than any other ethnic group. Second, religious myths and misperceptions, concerned that in that great getting up morning when you go to the pearly gates, you might need your heart, you might need your eyes to see your great grandmother and great grandfather and so forth. And forgetting that it isn't giving that you receive, it isn't pardoning you're pardoned. Is in dying that you're born to eternal life. Christ died and gave his life that we could have a second chance at life. So it is the right thing to do. But so that was the second obstacle, religious myths and misperceptions. The third had to do with the basic distrust of the healthcare providers, because the Tuskegee incident and many other instances like that existed, and therefore there was a great distrust of the healthcare profession. Fourth, there was a fear that if I sign a donor card and I go to the hospital, they might be more concerned with getting my organs and tissues than with saving my life. We then took steps to make sure that that was not the situation. And then finally, the 5th obstacle was racism. Now, when we did this study, not only did we find the reasons for African Americans being reluctant to become donors, but we found ways to overcome it. Listen to this. When I started the study, out of the 40 people, only 2 were willing to sign donor cards. At the end of the 2-hour sessions, all 40 of the 40 agreed to sign organ donor cards, which said to us that not only had we identified the obstacles, but we also had identified a solution. Because what we did was then we decided to start a DC organ donor program, which consisted of the same group that we had in our process, surgeon, donor, a recipient, and another healthcare provider, nurse. And so with that, we then started the DC organ donor program. Because of the success of the DC organ donor program, and you might add, well, why would you think that you could make a difference? To be frank with you, I didn't. But I just knew that with my religious background and as a surgeon, this was something I just had to do. You know, I'd been successful with impossible tasks before. I overcame tuberculosis had a lobectomy, was able to go to Africa to have my life dream come true. And so why not go back to the churches and go back to the community and see if I can educate them and empower them to become part of the solution. And in point of fact, that's what we tried to do. Now, one of the things I did, and the people who helped me the most along the way were the people who looked like me, John Ruffin, Lewis Stokes, Lewis Sullivan. They were the ones I went to after I couldn't get funds anywhere else. I went to them. They, Lewis Stokes, who was a congressman, Lewis Sullivan, who was the Secretary of Health, and John Ruffin, who ran the Office of Minority Health, worked together to get funds from the National Institutes of Health. Not $500 this time. We asked for millions, but at first we only got $200,000, $300,000. And then later on, we got up to a total of, over the next 15 years, $16 million. We got $16 million that helped us to go from the DC Organ Program to the National Minority Organ Tissue Transplant Education Program, taking the information we got from what we learned from the District of Columbia, Black people in the District of Columbia, and taking it to all of the other ethnic groups. As a consequence of these of going to these ethnic groups, we were able to change things around. So much so that the number of minority donations doubled. The number of African American donations quadrupled. And as a consequence, it was safe to say that we made a difference, and that we can now say, look at the data. The data says that, for example, in 2010, we'd gone from the bottom to the top. When we started off, we had very few Black donors. But in 2010 and 2012, we had Black were the number one organ donors per million rate in the United States. And so it's a miracle that I think is attributable to my faith in God and belief and willingness to go into the community, to educate and empower them to become part of the solution to the problem. And that is exactly what happened. And because of the success in the Black community, we then took that to all the other ethnic groups and were successful in making a difference. So it's a long-winded answer to your short question, why I went into transplant surgery and how MOTEP was conceptualized and developed.
Well, I tell you, Doctor, everything that you just shared is nothing shy of amazing. And people have actually, before I even move on to some things I was going to say, people have really been chiming in while you were doing this sharing. So I'm going to go back on a few of these comments. Wow. Jared, you want to help me out? Put some more. And shout out to all my guests that just came in. I saw Steve Belcher. I saw Lisa G. Hey, you guys. I saw Jamila. Thank you all for joining. My guy, Philip, who hosts A Second Chance, he made some great comments. He wasn't going to miss the show when he found out you were on it. And who else did I see? I saw someone ask a question. Oh, I think that was Jared who asked if you were an identical twin, just out of curiosity.
Yes, I am an identical twin. My twin brother, however, was a judge for many years in Brooklyn, New York. And it's interesting because while we're identical twins, he can't stand the sight of blood. So he went into the law field. But yes, he's
That's
30 minutes
cool.
older than I am.
Wow. And Jamila, can you put that one back up there, please, Jared? She said that when he throws that back up there, I just want to share her comment. It just goes to show you, no matter of your adversities that we face, you still can accomplish great things. And that was so true, because when you were sharing that part about how you were told you're never going to be able to be a doctor or whatever, get it out of your head. And I just thought that was so sad for an adult to say that to a kid. And it reminded me of that saying, let nobody tell you ever what you cannot do. And I gave the show the right name, Destined for Greatness, because that's exactly how you've lived your life, from the fact of everything you endured, going into foster care, and your illness with TB and a lung being removed. I mean, and yet you still persevered through it all because, yes, your belief in God and the fact that He had a plan for your life, as He does for all of us, in Jeremiah 29:11. And that was His plan to use you to do what you're doing now. So, oh, who is that? Yeah, of course, Jared has an identical twin brother, 7, 8 minutes apart. Yeah, Jeff, his brother. Yeah, and his brother's wife, which is, if I'm not mistaken, in Jared's testimony, as far as he has a podcast as well called The Warrior's Quest. His brother's wife ended up with kidney disease and needed a kidney, and so look at Jared as her brother-in-law, still putting the word out here on behalf of that. So that is just really a wonderful thing. So let me move on to my next. And I love you, even though it was lengthy, you actually touched on another question I had for you, and it was regarding, I had heard you speak before, it seemed like on the five, those five nuggets you gave about why people don't donate. Oh, she's from Ethiopia. Okay, yeah. And so I'm so glad you touched on that because that was going to be a question. But doctor, I was thinking about too how growing up, we are all taught by our parents to believe in what they believe, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because these are the things we hear, the conversations in the household, and when we're just kids listening to everything, that our parents are actually saying. So it doesn't always mean they're necessarily true. And so, when we grow into adults with those beliefs that have rather been instilled in us by our parents and kind of, in fact, even embolden us, do you have a technique per se for educating and encouraging, such as the millennial generation, on the importance of becoming not only, persevering through the fears of living donation, but even more so, we have this phobia even in relation to deceased donation. Do you have like some type of strategy that you use when you're educating about that you can share with us?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I actually I'm a very simple person, and so my strategy is to just let people understand that what we're doing is for ourselves. The fact that we are so we have so much high blood pressure, we have so much
Yeah.
diabetes, we have so much obesity, we have so much substance abuse. Uh, Therefore, it is in our own best interest to help ourselves. So that's what it's interesting that I've had the opportunity to go into the communities and to educate and empower them. And what we do, we go to the community, we educate them. They then take the message themselves and make a difference. So we educate the community so the community can then go and take the message and share it and make a difference that must be made. So that it's a very simple, and everything that I've done has been very simple, and it all emanated from my faith in God, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
With Him, I believed I could not fail, and therefore I just continued to do whatever was the next step. And lo and behold, when I stepped out in faith, there was a platform for me to land on. And so, if you only believe in God, believe in yourself, there's no mountain you can't climb, and there's no impossible dream.
Yeah,
And I
I
think that
couldn't.
that is the message that
Mhm.
I.
I'm sorry, doctor. It froze up
And
for a
sometimes it
second. Can you
seems
just?
so simple.
Mhm. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you froze up for a minute. And so more and more people are traveling outside the country for kidney transplants. I'm kind of hearing this more and more. And often it's said because it's cheaper. So I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on this, and how safe do you feel that this is, especially in relation to once they return to the States, any potential problems as a result of the transplants? Because I also hear unfortunate things, how things aren't, situations, circumstances aren't always as clean there. Now, I do hear a lot of that also in relation to plastic surgeries. However, I hear some of these things as well in relation to kidney transplants in particular. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think it makes much sense because it's cheaper to get transplants here. But here's what the problem is. The problem is that it's not always easy to get donors. We have over 100,000 people waiting for organs. And
Yeah.
we did the most transplants we've ever done last year, and that was 40,000. So we have about 17 to 20 people dying every day because of the shortage of donors. So the reason they will go elsewhere is not because of the price, but because of the fact that there's a shortage of organs. And so that is the number one problem in transplantation, the shortage of donors.
Hmm.
But for 97%, 95% of the people, uh, insurance will cover transplants. So it's generally not the price of it that gets you, because most of the population has insurance. They have Medicare or
Hmm.
Medicaid.
Hmm.
But they go out of the country because of the lack of organs, and they might be able to buy and sell organs other places, which is unwise and unhealthy. But some people will do that. But it's not
Hmm.
because it's cheaper there. Just it's just that you may find more donors there.
Hmm. Hmm. And sometimes I often wonder. I know different hospitals do things rather in a different way. However, our strategies here are pretty much the same as far as the protocol with regard to transplantation, especially in relation to deceased donation. That's what I'm an organizer with Lifelink of Florida as well. And so this is one of my, the things I do with Lifelink. I go out and I talk to people at various events to try to get, deceased organ donor signers on their driver's licenses and things as such. And of course, as you shared earlier, there's definitely always the myths and misconceptions. Um, but what I do explain to them is that there is a protocol for these things, and it's very strict here. Now, I don't know about that outside of the United States, of course, but I do know what goes on here, having been in this arena so long. So why do you feel, I know you shared some myths and misconceptions about their distrust and their hesitation under the five facts that you gave with regard to transplantation. Do you also feel that is also, those facts are also pretty much pertaining to the COVID vaccine as well? And do you feel that it could be to some extent due to possibly what I would probably call it is systemic racism?
Yeah, I think it's all based on systemic racism, and I think predilection to hypertension and diabetes. Part of a lot of that is, some of it is genetic. We have found that there is a genetic predisposition that actually there's some genes that we got from Africa that helped knock out uh, sleeping sickness. But that same gene that helped knock out sleeping sickness increased our likelihood of getting kidney disease. And so
Mhm.
while that is true as well. I noticed that you said Amy Brown is from Ethiopia. I also, when I left Port Harcourt, I went to Dembidolo, uh, Ethiopia, and also to uh, parts of Ethiopia because I thought that's where I was going to do my next medical missionary assignment. So Amy Brown, I spent some time in Ethiopia as well. Met Haile Selassie, who long before your time, but and others. But it's clear to me that the same rationale, same thing that COVID has exposed, is the inequitable situation of vaccines and the institutionalized racism or systemic racism that pervades. So these are, and this is not something that's only in the United States. It's something all over the globe. And I think it's just that we are more aware of it here. But wherever there are Black people, they enjoy some of the same things that we enjoy here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. And of course, there's, and that was just obviously, yes, my question in relation to, people of African American people of color, but this uncomfortability and the disparities with regard to the vaccine, that's pretty much with many people, which is, in my opinion, why this thing still keeps spreading. But I know myself as a soon to be in about 3 weeks, 17-year kidney recipient. I'm not saying everything was a comfortability with me regarding the vaccine, because I was very uncomfortable about the fact that in the beginning, when all this began and when the vaccine came into play, of which I had the Pfizer, no one, not even my nephrologist, or I'm on a co-chair on the board, transplant board over at Tampa General Hospital, which, as I'm sure know, Dr. TGH is about number 3 in the nation for transplantation. And I'm in these meetings. No one could tell me, well, how is this really going to benefit us as transplant recipients? Because the way I saw it was, we already have this compromised and very suppressed immune system due to our immunosuppressants. So if this vaccine is supposed to boost our immune system, in my mind, I'm thinking that's like two entities fighting against each other. You can't force the immune system of a suppressed person to increase if we are taking medication to suppress it. And I just kind of I was going to ask you to give me your thoughts on that, if you have any, or if my analyzation of that, makes any sense.
Well, it's pretty clear now. At first we didn't know, but now we know that transplant patients need the vaccine more than any other group for the very reason that you mentioned, because of the fact, as you pointed out, you're taking medications to knock out the immune system. But in order to overcome COVID, you need to have an immune system that is capable of fighting off the virus. And in order to do so, you need protection, whether it's the sensitized cells or the antibodies. You need to have them. And it's clear now that transplant patients need more vaccinations than anybody else. So that while most people may need 2 or 3 injections, it may well be that the transplant people may need 4. And it depends. And so that they've done a number of studies specifically on transplant patients. And they've identified that for some, they respond well. But for many, they need to have more booster shots than others. And so it can be that for certain people who are immunosuppressed, you need to have a 4th shot. And nobody needs it more than the cancer patient and the immunized and the immunocompromised patient who's had a transplant.
And that, I'm assuming, is that based on the fact, because one thing I forgot to add when I was making my statement about that is because of the fact that, in fact, what I've been seeing being in the meetings is that the unfortunate factor is that many transplant recipients are not building the antibodies in the way that other, people are who obviously are not immunocompromised. Now, when I took, my doctor had me take it, I had built antibodies from mine, and I've had all 3 shots. So can you, elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, and it's just that they've done studies to show that some people will need a fourth shot,
Hmm.
and that the people who are immunocompromised the most are the people who need the more vaccines. And as these, a lot of people forget that the Spanish flu, as they call it, in 1918, 100 years ago, we're still taking flu shots today because the virus has variations every year. And so the same thing is likely to happen with COVID. And it may well be that we will have to take boosters every 6 months or every year. It may well be. But if that's the price we have to pay to stay out of the hospital and to keep
That's
from
right.
dying, that's the price that we should be willing to pay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
And
that it's one of the things that's important is for the Black community, as well as all communities, to recognize that the purpose of the vaccine is to keep you from dying from COVID and keep you from
right.
having to go to the hospital. And so, therefore, the vaccine has been a success. It's just something that fighting off the viruses that are trying to destroy us is something that we have to be continually aware of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the key factor right there. It was never said. I had to reiterate that in a different meeting that someone was who was kind of against it was saying that about her brother, and how he said, oh, you guys got the vaccine and you still got COVID. And I said, well, wait a second. COVID, the vaccination, it was never said that you would not still get COVID. What it says is that the probability of you ending up pretty much in a deathly ill state and possibly on a ventilator was much less possibly likely than being in that situation, which is definitely not a situation that anyone wants to be in. That's not good. So so I agree with you totally. And that's why I said, even in spite of how I may have felt in the beginning, I knew that, and not only myself, but you guys out there as well, who are especially recipients, we are in a much more sensitive situation in life. And we have had some recipients in the hospital sick who were stricken with COVID. And thank God most of them survived, but they were very, very, very sick. So, Doc, let's talk a bit about now some prevention, because this is a very, very important topic, for everyone to work on. It's important to me that what there should really be a focus of, and part of why I do what I do with this, which I know is what God wanted me to do, is talk about decreasing the need for organ transplants through prevention. That's really the key to me. And so let's talk about that. Can you share your thoughts on things that can be done in the
Yeah.
prevention category?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, in 2001, we started a campaign of love yourself, take care of yourself,
Hmm.
because we recognize that there are two problems. One is we have more kidney disease and more end stage renal disease than anybody else. And so we need to prevent the need in the first place. So healthy living is what we need to do. Now, how do we do that? We need to exercise at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. We need to eat the right foods, we need less red meat, more vegetables, fruits, and fish. And I think that going to the doctor after the age of 12 becomes important because our Black children get more hypertension than anybody else, and they start at the
Hmm.
age 12. And so going to the doctor, get your blood pressure checked, finding out what your cholesterol level is. Uh, so an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so we bridge both of them, because when we go to the community, we talk about developing healthy lifestyles being as important as donating, because we want to, uh, for example, if you get a donor, you want somebody who has good organs. And so one of the ways to do that is to exercise and meditate. Sometimes we talk about exercise. We forget that as much as you exercise, you should meditate. You should do both about the same
That's
amount
right.
of time, because your body, soul, health, body, soul, and mind, all of it together makes you a healthy person. There's someone, good friend of mine, Dr. Georgia Dunstan, who talks about the soul genomics, and how the cells of the body, actually, every one of them is a piece of God in them. And that piece is spoken to by meditation, and then actually communicating with the creator of the earth. And so it's important for us to uh, meditate, to exercise, and to eat nutritional foods. The plant-based uh, is good for you, healthy, eating healthy food, avoiding alcohol and substance abusers uh, equally. And then, of course, one of the things that we tend not to talk about in our community is obesity, because that's another cause of kidney failure.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. Eating less processed foods, Jamila said. So true. And as you said, Doc, when you talked about, so that's true too. Red meat is not good for you. I know when I got diagnosed, I stopped eating red meat and never went back. So that's been about 19 years ago. And I've always tried to tell people, and you can confirm this if it's true, that things like even dark sodas are not good for you, and too much fried food. These are all things that can really take a toll on our bodies and digestive systems. Is that correct too?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And uh, there's no question that uh, the things that we love the most often,
Right.
sugar and fried foods, as you mentioned, are things that
Hmm.
hurt us more than anything else. And your readership, people are talking about all the right things.
Yeah, yeah,
Talking,
yeah.
spending
That's a
time with
personal one
them.
of my good friends. She's a vegan, and
They're
she's a
all
vegan
eating
cook.
less.
Yeah.
They understand.
Oh
They've
yeah.
got it
Oh
right.
yeah.
They've got it right.
Yeah, yeah, that's my girl. That's who prepares my vegan meals for me when I go home to Chicago when I go visit. So yeah, she definitely
Yes, yes.
knows what she's talking about with that. And
But
we know, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go
I
ahead,
was going to
Doc.
say that there's been studies that demonstrate that more than 25% of the American population doesn't exercise, and
Hmm.
exercise is the key to aging. Uh,
Yes.
I've been blessed. I have a wife who's uh, cooked me healthy food. Part of the reason God's blessed me to allowed me to live to be 85.
Hmm.
But I think that meditation, exercise, and fruits and vegetables,
Hmm.
and also uh, trying to keep your weight down if you can, and
Yeah.
then also get your yearly checkup to see what is your cholesterol level, and men, what is your PSA, what is your blood sugar. These are things that we all should know about, because we're
Hmm.
talking about healthy lifestyles, and that makes a
Hmm.
big difference.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned about our men, because I like to always like hammer that in, like with my brothers, and making sure my son, adult son, and he's good about that. He's a little over 40, but it's
Then
so
get the
important
colonoscopy after 45.
after 45. Okay, I got to make sure
Yeah,
I tell him that.
colonoscopy,
Yeah.
because yeah, that catches those cancers early and prevents them
Hmm.
than tumors from becoming cancers. So that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I want to see, more men be really in tune with their health. It's just so important, because I watched it, sickness befall upon my grandfather, and even though he was like about 80, 82, but I believe that if he had been more proactive in seeing the doctor at least once a year, a lot of these things can be caught in advance, to the point where they may not get to the level of totally being out of control. So, Doc, I just have one more question for you before we go, because this has been so awesome, and I don't want to take up a whole lot of your Sunday, because I get asked this a lot. This comes up a lot in meetings and things like that. How safe do you feel deceased donors are for a successful, potentially successful transplant with some longevity, obviously, if that donor happens to have Hep C or has been a drug user before?
Well, one of the great advances, I think 2 years ago, they got the Nobel Prize for developing the medication that cures hepatitis C. So we now have medication that can eliminate hepatitis C. So that's something that we never had before. Uh, so I think that there's little question that we now can cure hepatitis C, and that used to be the number one cause for liver transplantation, but now it's going to be uh, uh, fatty changes in the liver that is going to cause the livers to die, so that diabetes and being overweight becomes an additional problem. I know you'd mentioned earlier about living donation, and I think that's one of the things that I think we should emphasize, the fact that when you can, uh, we need to have more African Americans who are living donors. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Over the last 5 years, the number of African Americans who are living donors has dropped considerably. And
Yeah.
in order to get a transplant, if you get on a deceased donor list, you have to wait 5 years sometimes.
Right.
Whereas if you have a living donor, you can get a donor within 6 months. Also, the success rate with living donors is uh, 10 to 20% higher than it is with deceased donors. So it's something that we as a community have not done as often as we should have. It's food for thought that living donation is something that we need to become more comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Lisa G said she heard once, you take the once you take the booster shot, you will always need it, like a
That's
diabetic
correct.
needs the shot.
Well, it's true, but you know, many of us take a flu shot every year and it
Right.
prevents a lot of people from going to the hospital and dying. So, with the same thing with COVID, it's going to be just the flu is a virus, just like COVID is a virus. And with the virus, if you're gonna, if your immune system is going to be able to fight off the virus, you need to get a booster shot, just like you do for the flu every year. So with COVID, it's going to be the same. Probably
Yeah.
every 6 months to a year, you need a shot. But that's the nature of surviving in the era of viruses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amen. I agree, Doc. Hey, Yolanda, Yogi. Hey, she said, great show. Thanks for joining us. So, my last question, Doc, actually is going to be something I often ask of any professionals that I have on the show. What would be your greatest advice for a person that is waiting on their transplant, and while they're waiting, and many are on dialysis? I know for me, and I've shared this before, I think the success of most things, no matter what it is, no matter what type of decisions you're trying to make, and especially when I was going through my illness, was about my state of mind, because the mind is so powerful. And to me, the most important thing you can do is to stay positive and optimistic about it. What are your thoughts on, on that, and what you would say to encourage
I couldn't agree
someone
more.
waiting? Mhm.
I couldn't
Excuse me.
agree. I couldn't agree more. And I think what has made my life possible is my faith in God and belief and positive perspective. Because uh, if you believe, you can do it. If you doubt and if you think negative all the time, you can't do it. So, thinking positively and believing in God and having faith in God has been the key to my success, along with a wife of 53 years who's spoiled me ad nauseum. But anyway, uh, I think that there's very little you can't do if you believe in yourself and you believe in God.
Amen. Yeah, that's right, Jared. Faith is very important. Wow, wow, wow. Well, this has been so awesome, Doc. I just really want to thank you for being on the show and just all this plethora of great information that you have given us to to take with us, and just the encouragement, and just your story in itself is a true testimony to greatness, like I said. And just encourage, it can be so encouraging for other young African American men that may possibly be experiencing some of the things you've experienced, as far as not being encouraged in the right way. And God knows the children need that. So I just really commend you for what you're doing. I saw you had so many awards, Doc. Oh my God. Dr. Calendar has so many awards. You would have to go on the internet to really look and see. I would have had to take up literally at least 15 minutes of the show to go through all his commendations and acknowledgments. And I just am so honored to have been able to meet you. And if there's another award ceremony or any kind of conference, please let me know, because I will fly down to DC to come and be a part of that. But I do want to leave
Well,
you with one thing.
you're very
I'm
kind.
sorry. Say again.
I noticed one of your people had on there about fasting periodically, and she's right. That is helpful as
Yes,
well. You
absolutely.
have
I
quite
just
an
came.
audience. You have
Oh
quite an audience.
yeah, I've got a great audience. And fasting, that was probably Jamila that said that, because I was even telling her I just came off the Daniel fast. I did 21 days, and I'm gonna tell you that, guys.
Oh, really?
Yes, fasting. I fast every January, and I get so much clarity on things that I may have been confused about a little bit, apprehensive about certain decisions. It's healthy, it's a detoxification. I shut down social media when I do it, so I didn't do my show last month. And I'm telling you, I feel like a new person. My daughter was complimenting me, saying, "Man, Mom, you look so alive." And I'm like, did I look dead before? She's like, no, you just look great, And so, yeah, and I lost about 8 pounds on that fast too, because I work out and stuff too. So it was really, really a blessing to do that fast. So I encourage anybody. I mean, that's a little intense. You do have to be kind of used to it, but you can do it. I'm not saying you can't do it. You can do it. Or just do a day or two a week, giving up something is not good for you that you're eating, and pray about that, to for God to rid you of that. So I'm not going to get into that. We'll do another show on that. But I want to leave you with the scripture, Doctor, because this is what I do for all my guests. I pray about it the day before, and just ask God to, I just reflect on this person, and I'm reading about you. And so what came upon my heart was under Acts 20, verse 35, which says, "In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of work, we must help the weak." Remembering the words Lord Jesus said himself, "It is more of a blessing to give than to receive." And that is exactly what you're doing. You are shepherding the weak, the sick, and you are being a blessing to so many. And that is why I believe God blessed you in abundance and will continue to bless you. Look at you, you're 86 and you look amazing. So thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you
God
for the
bless you.
opportunity. And thank you for such a wonderful audience that is so on target. So on target.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, you and your wife have a wonderful night, and I got my eyes on you and everything you're doing. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Okay?
Okay, goodbye. Bye.
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 Wow. Okay. Is he sweet or what? I mean, guys, just man, all he went through, and even and that just goes to show you can't judge a book by the cover. Now, you would think a man that has that type of greatness, you would never think he was 2.0 GPA. I mean, you would think that person just excelled in their like entire life of school, and that just goes to show how that's not always true. And many great people were very bad students in school, actually, many of them. Einstein, I mean, the list just is really broad. But when God has a plan for you and, for your life, okay, which he does, he's got a plan for all of our lives. It's going to be executed, okay? So I encourage everyone to continue to walk in your gift because we all have one. Focus on your gift, not anybody else's gifts. Okay, their gifts are not your gifts, and that's okay. Your gift might be behind the scenes or whatever, but it's important for you to just hone in on what God has for you. And the only way that you're going to be able to successfully do that, you got to have a prayer life with him, and he's going to reveal that to you. Okay, please, I want you to do that. That's really important. You don't want to spend the rest of your life and get down the line wishing that you had done things differently. Okay, so thank you guys so much. I am actually going to get off here, run my little dog outside real quick because I'm going right back into co-hosting a show with my friend Phil and Tafaro Cook on A Second Chance, which is going to be airing at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. But I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed this show. Thank you for all my guests who were chiming in. Man, I appreciate you guys. Please don't forget, thanks to my producer, Jared, behind the scenes. Please don't forget, thank you, OJ. Don't forget to share. Please, please, please share here on Facebook as well as, of course, on YouTube. That's how we continue to get this out here. It ain't over. We still got a lot of work to do. Remember, Jesus loves you, so do I, and there ain't nothing in the world that you can do about it. I'll see you next time. Have a great night. Bye, and protect yourself.